Hello everyone, welcome to the Service Binding Operator Weekly Developer Call. Today is May 5th, 2022, and I think we do have some topic of discussion. We do have the sizing and refinement, but I think David, it would be better if you go first, and meanwhile we can see what is required for the issue tries and everything.
Sure. I just want to start bringing the idea of I've been discussing with a little bit with Andy. We touched the topic also on the work group for the upstream effort. Um, and then I think I'm gonna start discussing with the whole team here as well. So the idea is a service resource mapping, the same way we do workload resource mapping, not the same way but similar. The idea is to have a CR for the mapping as opposed to annotations in the CRDs, and as opposed to hard coding the mapping in our source code. I just want to leave it at that for now and see if you guys have had any discussions around that um, before, and if it's pros and cons that you see at a high level, and then we can go deep and try to do a good design around that, right? You understand the idea? Not you, Andy. I know you. We've been talking. So this is more for maybe Pavel, Kariki. I was expecting by you to be here, so I'm pretty sure he will like to wait in on that as well.
So the idea is that for a service, the CRD, for example, instead of adding annotations to the CRD, you would introduce a CR with that
Right,
information, right?
with the same
Okay.
information, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. Hmm. And then one advantage I see just before you, I mean, as as you get the um one of the things that I want to do is get rid of the hard coding of in code, right? For the out of the box services. So if we could use that same, once you have this mechanism, we could use that mechanism for out of the box um, services. Something that, for example, if the mapping changes, instead of us having to go and do a release, basically, we can ask the people on the field to work around by changing the mapping on the CR, basically, right? So it'll be easier for us to respond to defects that are related to mapping changes. Uh, if the original service CR changes, we can react quickly to that.
But if
And
out of the box support is there, uh, I mean, ideally, what we target for the out of the box support is ideally we ask the services to provide the support. Until and unless they provide it, we provide the support. So, like, I mean, this is the third way
Right.
which you're talking about. Is I mean, that's what I'm
Yeah,
trying to
yeah, yeah.
understand.
Yeah, and by the way, it'll be easier for us to then tell the service, oh, by the way, include this object in your operator, and you have support. It's gonna be a little easier for us to sell to the service team the changes they need to make. It's just because we already did the work for them. It's just a matter of them then owning that object, right? The other advantage I see is um, an admin can come in if we document it. An admin can come in, add a new object, and all of a sudden we have a new bindable kind, you know, that we could use. So it's a little bit more than it allows more service binding enablement for a cluster admin point of view, right? if the options we have today is either we annotate or either we implement provision service or we do out of the box. Out of the box, I don't like it too much because of that, sensibility to changes that we don't, and then we have to do a whole release for us to react to that, right? So this will alleviate that a little bit, and at the same time, is making it more flexible for someone, an admin, to say, "Oh yeah, I know the service, I know how they do the status on the CRs, and I know what config maps they use. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the mapping myself." Right? And
And David, you mentioned that this would be for the CRD. What about the CRs? Individual
yes,
CRs.
yes. There's two ways to do it, which is one is to look at the CR, and then that mapping becomes a provision service itself, right? Which we could actually talk about that, because I think that's the next level. But I want to keep it simple for this initial drop. It'll be something I want to make it as the same as the annotations, the same logic. It's just instead of being annotated on the CRD of the target service, it'll be a separate object that will make it more dynamic for someone to create, regardless of the service being aware of that or not. You know what I mean?
So it would be like we would have two types of resources, like service resource mapping or service instance resource mapping, something like that.
That's a good idea. So, well, yes, eventually, I think what I want to target is we have the service resource mapping that maps the CRD.
Mhm.
We watch for that new bindable kind, and if the new bindable kind instance comes up, we can automatically create the instance object, right? And that instance object is already a provision service. What
Mhm.
that will do is, for our controller, we don't have to worry about Red Hat specific functionality, right? Our controller could just be listening to provision service. And what that does is it'll make it easier for us to adopt the upstream controller, right? Because the upstream controller in reference implementation is not gonna be looking at these other enablement features like annotations and new CRs, etc. Right? So if we could keep the logic separate, we, meaning we do the enablement in a separate controller, the enablement via annotation or via CR is gonna always create a provision service, right? And that will be a third resource. So we basically have four resources. We have service binding itself. We have the bindable kind, just to be able to know what types to watch for, right? And then we'll have the service resource mapping and the service instance mapping, basically, right? Maybe not a mapping, but a service instance in general, right? And then the service instance could reference the original service. It'll reference the secret via the status binding field. And then it's basically a provision service. And then discoverability is easy because we're only looking for provision services. The logic for the controller, our main controller, is going to be simple. It's just going to be provision services, right? So, but that's long term. Initially, I just want to have the CRD mapping, right, in an object, so that we can make it more dynamic. All right. I think that's. Let me know offline or in other meetings. I just want to set that, and so you guys can start thinking about it. Okay.
Okay, this sounds good. Anyone wants to like say anything on this? I think I'll take that as a no. Uh, I think we can go ahead and check any issue tries if we have. Okay, I do see this from Predrag, and I believe like Andy, you have already seen this.
Yeah, I'm just working on this, right?
Yes, I started work on this yesterday.
Okay.
Well, rather, I started my new work on this yesterday. I have some stuff going back to like January and February, but I've decided to just kind of start from whole cloth because the stuff I wrote back then didn't really work with how I was. My implementation has changed, and so some things and how I want to do things have changed as well. Also, I've gotten some feedback.
Okay.
So
Okay. I think Pavel has already given a reply to this. I believe then there are no new bugs or anything to be triaged.
How do we know that? Because of the labels?
Yeah, I think we have gone through all these things.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have already gone through all this. And some of them are pretty much older. Those also are triaged. So, and we have commented on it, but I'm not sure if we have started working on it. So if we want to like just prioritize them and start working on it, we can maybe make a list out of it and do that in one of our calls.
Wait, something caught my attention that go back?
Two.
No, go what you say up? No,
Okay.
in the list.
Okay.
Go a little bit. Yeah, keep going. What is that support binding service deployed from Helm charts? I think this is a long time ago. Okay.
This was last year, February.
Yeah. Okay.
And this, I think you can now, I think since it has already raised a request and everything, I think now this should be maybe resolved or something. We can let it out.
Yeah, that's binding to a Helm chart is a very abstract. So a Helm chart brings a lot of resources. So which resource do we bind to? I mean, that's
To any Helm chart, I think that's what he's
the original
telling.
deal was to SBO should allow binding to any Helm chart, okay, without SBO users required to understand their resources are inside the Helm chart. Yeah, that's okay, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, for with an operator, it's very clear because the operator has a CRD that he manages, right?
Yeah, I think
And
that
and there's a life cycle of a Helm chart doesn't have such thing. A Helm chart can be deploying many things, you know. So and a Helm chart is a single tenant type of thing. You unless your solution itself is multi-tenant and can enable multiple instances, and then that is a manual step. It's not a automatic thing like it happens with operators. So,
okay.
but I mean, we can still support it. It's just it needs to be it needs to come from the Helm chart itself, saying, "Hey, this is my provision instance," right?
Okay.
And then, okay, yeah, take a look at that.
Okay. I think then, I mean, we don't have any other topic for discussion. So I think we can disperse.
Sounds good.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Until next time.